Hello, good evening and welcome to PM Express. Now, the Argentine's Libertad readies itself to leave the shores of Ghana after a UN International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea ordered a release of the warship, which is berthed among commercial vessels and containers piled high in Ghana's busiest commercial port. The argument of the South American country is that a warship cannot be seized, and it's supposed to reign supreme, prompting a ruling that the ship must be released immediately and unconditionally. An embarrassment to Buenos Aires and a sharp reminder of its intensifying court battle in New York over debts spanning a decade. Argentina is joyous over the ruling, but the legal experts have cautioned the saga is far from over. Can this UN order be fulfilled while an appeal process is underway here in Ghana? That's the question we have for discussion tonight. The Argentine Warship, is it homebound or is going to be here for a while? In the studio, I have with me to my immediate left, Dennis Ejay-Jumo, who is a law lecturer at GIMPA, and he's an associate at Kolendi at Law. Next to him, I have Franklin Kujo, who is president of Imani. We are also expecting Ebenezer Apieku, who is the director of Legal Bureau at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We're expecting him to join us in the studio. Gentlemen, it's great to have you here, Franklin and Dennis.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's start from the legal angle. I'll start with you, Dennis. I don't know whether you feel that the conditions of this ruling can be met immediately and unconditionally by Ghana.
I respectfully don't think that the conditions can easily be met because, first of all, Ghana is governed by a constitution. The constitution sets up the structure of government. There is a separation of powers between the judiciary, the legislature, and that of the executive. The sources of law of Ghana, per Article 11, does not include international law. And quite clearly, the court structure of Article 126 does not include the tribunal. And for that matter, it cannot, the orders of a foreign court must be adopted by the local court. And for that matter, the international tribunal's decision cannot be enforced as the government wanted people to see it, because you have an order of a court of competent jurisdiction restraining the release of the ship. I'm wondering how process can empower them to easily release the ship, unless a court of competent jurisdiction, i.e. by this time, it means the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court reverses or varies the terms of the order made by the High Court. They cannot release the ship. That is quite... And immediately the executive arm of government decides to release the ship, it will seek to undermine the principle of separation of powers government, because the judiciary cannot question one way or the other the discretion unless it seeks to violate the principle of the Constitution.
But is it to mean that this UN tribunal didn't take into consideration all of these and the judicial sovereignty of Ghana, really?
If you read the submissions of Learned Counsel San that was made before the tribunal, as well as the orders and various decisions of the tribunal, they did take that into consideration. They actually did make a distinction between the decision that they were considering, because that decision, in their respectful opinion, related to public international law, related to the law of the sea, involving the immunity of warships, whereas the decision of the local court involved a private law and involved private international law, because the parties in that decision, in the decision of the local court, involves a private corporate entity incorporated in U.S., NML Capital, and the Argentinian government, whereas the decision of the tribunal involved the government of Ghana and the government of Argentina. So they did take that into consideration, but in their respectful opinion, they felt it can be easily distinguished, and because Ghana has signed out into the treaty, Pacta Sat Servanda, they are obliged to, by the terms of the treaty, you have obliged, and for that matter, it can be enforced. But they sought to ignore, in my respectful opinion, how their orders will be enforced. Because at the end of the day, I'm wondering whether they will have UN police officers come together to release the ship.
Let's make it simple for our audience who do not understand the tough legal issues here. Is this enforceable? That's the simple question. Can this order be enforced by the UN tribunal?
It can be enforced in terms of sanctions that will be meted out against the state, but in terms of having officers of the law coming to release the ship, that will amount to abuse of the sovereignty of Ghanaians. In terms of enforcement of a decision of a court, even when you get foreign judgments, you have to register the judgment. When it only even depends on whether or not Ghana has a reciprocity agreement with such a nation before you can enforce it in the country. So it can be enforced, but in the light of the decision that we have, no, unless the High Court's order is varied, I really can't foresee. And
my understanding also is that this is a private issue, really, between private entities. How did it elevate to the state level?
Because, first of all, the subject matter in question involves a warship. There have been tongues of Cosmo International on treaties on warships. And one of the arguments that was also made was that it relates to whether or not the convention, the UN Convention on the Law of Sea, applies to it. People felt that even though it was the internal waters of the country, the convention or the treaty is still applicable. And for so long as the treaty is applicable and Ghana and Argentina are state parties who have ratified the said treaty without any reservation and seek to give the tribunal the power to decide of any dispute over them, then the tribunal can proceed on the matter. So that's what happened.
Frankly, in one of your Imani report titled Seized Argentine Ship, a Victim of Decades of Failed Economic Management, Corruption and Populism. I want to quote a section where you write that it appears popular opinion about Ghana in Argentina was what an Argentine journalist said to Imani, that Ghana was thought of as a banana republic and needed bullying, at least the kind that plays out within the corridors of power. You think Ghana has really been bullied this time?
Well, it depends on how the Ghanaian authorities decide that they are going to go forward with this ruling. I mean, it looks as if this was ominous. We were either clairvoyants. We realized that this was going to happen. The fact of the matter is that, as the learned lawyer here has stated, and indeed some other lawyers have stated, the questions are whether the ruling itself is enforceable. That is binding. Yes, it's true that the two countries are party to an international treaty.
We'll be grateful if you could speak up a bit.
Well, the two countries are bound by an international treaty. So yes, it's binding. But as he's rightly put it, is it enforceable? Without an affront, I mean, without obvious disrespect to the courts of Ghana. I mean, the fact that the courts themselves are constitutionally sanctioned. And so when we talked about the fact that it appears that Argentina thinks that we are a banana republic, in spite of the fact that that ruling by the High Court was one bold one, and in keeping with international practice, at least in keeping with international financial arrangement. If you owe, you pay. You know, in spite of all of that, Argentina somehow decided that they were going to go beyond the waters of Ghana, and then somehow get an invocation, if that's the word.
But I thought Imani was, you might correct me, but Imani was optimistic about Ghana's chances of going to court and perhaps winning and calling the bluff of Argentina at the time.
Exactly, because I thought that a court of the stature of the UN would take into consideration the ramifications of a ruling as that, and not just limit itself to a supposed military warship. It's an asset of a country. I mean, you owe, you pay. I think, and I may be making legal arguments that will be wrong, but I think essentially the argument here is that, look, this is a country that has defaulted several billions of dollars, and it's just telling you in your face, we won't pay. And to think that they have got the ability, in fact, they have got the capability to pay, because Argentina has close to $41 billion in international assets. And it is possible they can pay, but simply because of some sheer bravado, they decide not to pay. I thought that the UN tribunal should have punished them, tell them that, look, you've got to pay. But I can understand that the substantive matter that went to them was whether, you could detain a warship. But I would have thought that, before I go on though, I'd like to make this, in addition to what I heard from another learned lawyer, that look, the Argentines themselves have had respect for our courts here. In fact, they filed unconditionally to appear, to enter appearances, file appeals, not less than 3 under the high courts, the courts of appeal. So it is already in motion that they do respect the courts. So you cannot, in one breath, submit yourself to a court you obviously respect and seeking reliefs, and at the same time go somewhere else and ask for some other reliefs to quash the other jurisdiction. So in any case, the question you asked me about whether Ghana is indeed thought of as a banana republic
and has been bullied.
And has been bullied. It has been bullied only if, the bullying would take effect only if the foreign minister, as I heard him speak, really yields to what he thinks he wants to do. Because I've heard he wants to allow the Attorney General to help vary the High Court's decision, and then let the ship go. But as this learned man here has been telling you, as an affront against the
I think he feels
articles 125 and 127, the judicial power as well as the judicial independence of this country. I think we've got to respect what we have. You have no idea the respect Ghana commanded internationally when this issue came up. Because Argentina, they get judgments in New York, London, they just don't obey. That's the way it has been. So I think that if you want to look into the history of how Argentina got to where it got to,
so
you'd have thought.
We will come there for you to tell us in detail how that happened.
I wanted to make a quick intervention, just for the sake of our listeners and our viewers. The measure that these are provisional measures that has been made by the tribunal. This is not a final.
It's not
decision.
conclusive.
It's not conclusive on it. So
can you appeal though? Because that's a question I wanted to find.
These are provisional measures. I cannot confirm that you can appeal that decision that has been made. But these are provisional. That's what the point I wanted to make, that these are provisional measures that has been made by the tribunal. And it's quite interesting that the provisional measure seeks to finally determine the matter and seeks to give a,
And we are in a hurry to yield.
There is an AP report which says that the case has been appealed, and AFP report, and which says that the case has been appealed and is scheduled for hearing in January. Does that make a difference?
I think it does. It does make a difference. It confirms the due process in terms of going through all the requirements of the international law and all the requirements of the statute established the International Tribunal. But the critical issue for us is, and which is worrying for me, where without considering the effects and the nature, the scope of the ruling as against the ruling of our court of competent jurisdiction, officials of government comes out and say that we abide by the decision. And it's very worrying when you hear this coming from ministers of state. I think that they did not consider the implication of the decision that has been made by the tribunal vis-a-vis the decision of the High Court as it stands now.
But one quick question though. Is this AP report just today?
Yes,
because it looks to me,
but yes,
if it is December 7th, 17th,
my producers tell me that the hearing is scheduled for January 7th.
No, it's actually my checks at the court indicates that they have filed 3 appeals against the decision.
Okay.
The first appeal that they have against that decision was the ruling seeking to preserve the ship. Sure. And that one is pending. They have settled the records on it. The second appeal relates to...
No, actually, the appeal here is in
line of the International Tribunal.
This is not the appeal. This is the announcement of the order. So this one is the order, so it's not the appeal.
So there's not been any appeal yet?
No, I'm told that there is an AFP report today now that it has been appealed scheduled for hearing on 7th January.
And it's amazing.
I'll still cross-check that. But
the critical issue is that imagine the embarrassment. If the government of Ghana is seeking to appeal a decision, assuming without admitting that your facts are correct, then the government of Ghana comes back and tells people that I'm going to comply with the order. Yeah. It seeks to demotivate the gravitas of your case, that you believe so much in your case, you have Philip Sands making submissions for you, you believe so much in the competence of your people.
But the
the
Foreign Affairs Ministry says it is considering. It hasn't actually made a firm commitment that it's going to obey the order of the UN Tribunal.
And I give you an example. It doesn't change the issues. If a court makes a decision against you, you have time within which to consider and file your notice of appeal. You don't go ahead and tell the court that I'm going to comply with the order and turn around and appeal against it. The point is, it's a moral question, but I'm just saying that it defeats the gravitas with which you believe so much in your case.
Even now that we don't know if there's going to be an appeal, the fact of the matter is that posture was subservient. So for me to have heard the foreign minister say that, look, this was a private matter, it's caused major embarrassment to both Ghana and Argentina, and I felt, hey, if it is a private matter, then let it be.
Let it be a private matter.
I mean, if you proceed and say that you're going to ask the Attorney General to look into the case and ask potentially for a variation of, a variation of the other, the High Court's decision, then in actual fact, you are seen to be the main usurper of your own established courts. And I find that quite worrying. So even if there's no finality to the issue of an appeal, that posture...
So you think the government posturing is not right?
I think it is not so right. I mean, I think we are rushing diplomatic, should I call it, niceties over legal...
What's the diplomatic relationship between
Ghana and
Argentina?
In any case,
Argentina hasn't done too well in the last corruption index,
economically...
Really. It was 59, the last one I remember.
Besides, Argentina is economically... I mean, in terms of GDP, yes, it's bigger. But in terms of the economic indicators, woefully underperforming. In fact, Ghana is far ahead. I mean, if you want to do a comparison.
So that is quickly diplomatic angle. I just want to chip in here that in terms of the issues at stake, why diplomacy? Government playing more diplomacy because the warship arrived, docked in our internal was as an invitation of the government of Ghana. So you invite somebody into your country and these issues happen. So that's the more reason why.
What are the legalities of surrounding immunity of this warship? I mean, what does the law say about immunities of warships? No. And then in this particular instance, the Libertad.
In terms of, that is governed by international law, that warships under customary international law and among other treaties do have immunity. And for that matter, however, in relation to this case, when a party decides to waive its immunity against its assets that can be attached in enforcement of a court's decision, then it's a right that you had, but you have decided to waive it. It's like in the same way when somebody raises a case against you and you think that the person's case is statute barred, i.e. you should have brought the action within 3 years or 6 years. But you decide not to tell the court that this action is statute barred. The court says you shall forever remain your peace. So that even if you have immunity, but you decide to go ahead and sign a contract in which you are, and there are instances where people give sovereign guarantees against that, and it's done in international commercial, contracts. However, if you decide to proceed on that tangent, you cannot come back and say and wave the immunity flag when people have given consideration for the contract that they have signed.
Well, you're watching PM Express, and I'm here with Franklin Kojo from Imani, president of Imani, and Dennis Ejejumo, who is a legal practitioner and also a lecturer at Gimpa Law School. He's an associate of Kolendi. We'll take a break, and when we return, we will go into detail how Argentina got into this mess, and of course, is dragging Ghana along. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to PM Express. And Blue Rose Limited, a leading real estate developer with one of the economical and affordable rates in Africa, presents to you the Shelter for All. With over 10 years' experience in the real estate industry, Blue Rose Limited has won awards for the best low-income and affordable housing developer in Africa, and also an International Quality Crown Awards for its outstanding performance in the housing industry. Due to this, Blue Rose Limited is sharing these success stories and awards with all its clients by giving out a free 40-inch flat-screen television and a multi-TV dish to anyone who buys a house from 17th of December to 17th of January 2013. The site is located at Blue Rose City near Bujumbura with amenities like schools, roads, shopping centers, creche, clinic and recreation center. For more information, you can call 020-209-9622 or 020-435-341. The numbers again, 020-209-9622 and 020-435-341. Rush now and be proud to own a house. Blue Rose Limited, quality and affordable housing for all. So we're discussing the Argentine warship, whether it's homebound or is going to stay here for a while. Gentlemen, welcome from the break. Now, Franklin, tell me, I know you have followed closely the development of the Argentine ship berthing in Ghana and subsequently the Ghana authorities taking a court order to impound it here in Accra. Walk us through how this happened. I mean, how did Argentina get into this mess?
Well, people fall on hard times sometimes. Countries also fall on hard times. A couple of decades ago, Argentina fell on hard times and decided that, well, they were going to float bonds. Being, as it were, at the time, potentially a viable country. They got people interested. They got creditors interested. So the bonds were actually subscribed, close to over $100 billion US. To cut a long story short, Argentina decided that, well, it wasn't going to pay. It wasn't going to pay because after floating the bonds and having been overly successful, the bonds, of course, the rewards were not rewards here. I mean, in terms of the investment that came, were not applied efficiently and effectively to what it wanted, what the country intended to do.
And announced.
So there was corruption, massive fraud. There were near mafioso situations, really. I mean, Argentina had day-old presidents at a point in time. They've had close to 17 presidents during the turmoil. And so everything became so difficult. The judiciary, even the three arms of government were complete disarray. People talk about the fact that there was this famous president called Carlos Menem who bought off all members of the judiciary to the extent that the Supreme Court was virtually at his beck and call. So even when he was arrested for corruption and the house arrest of 5 months, the government was set to fall anyway within 5 months, and it did fall. And he got his own judges that he had installed while he was president to get him back. I mean, I mentioned Carlos Menem because he was thought of as one of the lesser evils. But the fact of the matter is that the story of Argentina is one that is sordid in terms of its record, economic freedom. It's woefully underperformed. It will interest you to know that on corruption, Ghana does so well. I mean, in leagues that you see on the Transparency International Index, whenever Ghana is in the 50s, Argentina is hovering around hundreds and all of that. Even
so
up to
corruption
today,
is a big deal.
it's a huge issue.
I mean,
the macroeconomics of that country right now is in complete disarray.
Wow.
Look,
I'm
just
surprised
2 weeks
to read that in 2011,
yes,
when Ghana ranked 69 in the corruption index, Argentina was 100.
Exactly. Now, let me tell you, there's more. Now, Argentina is actually this really bad country, that it keeps, not only does it refuse to pay debt, it keeps its books, it works its books as well. In fact, just today, the IMF warned Argentina that if it didn't come clean on her books, it was going to, severely be sanctioned, right? Now, that's just one part of the story. You talk about economic freedom. Basically, the index that measures how free a country is, according to at least 5 set criteria: limited government, lower taxes, sound money, if you like, decentralized decisions making, decentralization of power and resources. All of it, Ghana again inches up. The reason why I'm comparing Ghana to Argentina is essentially because the powers that be appear to make it look as if, well, we don't really have anything against Argentina. We are good neighbors and what have you, even though we are yet to see all of that. These diplomatic niceties have got to stop. In fact, the reason for which this case the reason why we are sitting here is essentially because that country, as per its history, has been a constant defaulter. And what is annoying is that they tell you in your face that we won't pay. In fact, what is being referred to as voucher funds, essentially, my friend, I owe you. It's been decades. I've been chasing you. I spend money chasing my own money. You don't pay. I get fed up. I sell it to this man. And this man has eyes all over the world. And so anywhere your assets bears,
they go and
gets it quickly. And that's essentially what happened to them. In fact, I would have wished that the Argentines had sent a plane to come for its crew. But I think they knew that if the plane came, it would be grounded. Now, I also need to make this point that, you see, this whole issue is at the heart of international financial transactions. A reason for which the High Court took a took a much more forward-looking stance. If you owe, you pay. You don't go borrowing money. And then when you are asked to pay, you start waiving immunities. Essentially, as the learned lawyer has pointed out, you even waive that immunity. Immediately, you started collecting debt left, right, center. And Argentina has defaulted. In fact, they just have disrespected the courts in New York, London, wherever. So, for me, I'm not surprised that they are trying to do same here. The fact of the matter is that on February 27th, there's going to be a landmark ruling in New York. That is where Argentina's wars will actually begin. Because most of these issues you see here, what we are fighting, this is just a chunk of what 300 million is what we are looking at. It goes
way beyond
close
that.
to about 11 billion right now to speak, So essentially, you need to look at the history of that country. Look, while this case was being heard in the courts in Argentina, there were riots. Thousands of people poured onto the streets in Buenos Aires, arguing, in fact, wanting the downfall of the Kirchner administration. You know what they cited? Murder, corruption, what's the other one? Just completely turning the country upside down. Inflation is in double digits, close to 25%. Many things are just not working. As I hear, Argentina wants to pay back. The funny thing is that some of this debt, its own debt, started attracting the debt from its own people. And they are not froze everybody's accounts in Argentina. So this is a country you've got to study properly. That's why sometimes I feel that judges, lawyers also have to
play a role.
They also need to learn international economics. Because you see, this international tribunal thing, the reason why I felt so angry was like, do these people know what they've just done?
Dennis, you have expertise in international business. So let's hear your comment. This is a claim by Cayman Island-based NML Capital. Now, its owner, American billionaire Paul Singer, leads a group demanding payment in full plus interest, about $350 million for dollar-based Argentine bonds. Now, this kind of transaction, what are the contractual elements, and where does the government of Ghana stand in this, really? I keep getting confused about the contractual transaction between private entities and how that suddenly has been hauled onto the state.
Okay. There's what we call privity of contract. If I have a contract with you, Steve, and the contract...
Do you have one with me?
Not now. In terms of privity of contract, if you have a contract with another party, the law expects that it's these two individuals who can ensure the enforcement of that contract. So unless it seeks to confer a benefit that is known between the two individuals on a third party, then the third party, although not a party to the contract, can still proceed that because both of you agree that this contract seeks to confer a benefit on me, then I can enforce it. But in strict common law contract, even that is not allowed. But our statute, our Contracts Act, have made inroads into the common law, which allows a party in which the contract seeks to confer a benefit on to enforce the contract. So in the first place, the government of Ghana is not a party to the contract. That is how come the government of Ghana was not a party to the suit in the High Court. That's the first point that must be made. Now, the second point that must also be made in terms of the contract that was between NML and Argentina government. And I just want to make it quite simple. Even among banks in the country, there are instances where you borrow money from SSB, you go and negotiate with UT Bank pays SSB and puts itself in the shoes of SSB and will do a readjustment of the loan facility for you. That's exactly what they did. At an instant where a capital decides to buy the debt of Argentina, steps into the shoe, renegotiates on it, Argentina says that, give me these are the terms that I would like to pay. So, okay, we all agree onto it. Now, you default on the terms of payment, and you must pay the money. Now, even in situations where the contract does not state that you shall pay interest expressly, unless interest is specifically waived by the parties, interest is a matter of law. So to the extent that people go to, you owe me money, you owe me 500 Ghana cedis. I go to court and give me my 500 Ghana cedis. As a matter of law, after the court has ordered that you should pay my 500 cedis, it will proceed to add the interest on it. So I don't want people to get out of context as if it's a conjecture or so unique. Just consider the simple transaction of how banks takes over the loan, the liability of other banks in terms of loan facility. That's exactly what happened. And that's more reason why the court has been willing to enforce the contract. But as Savanda, if you have agreed to abide yourself by these terms, then the court will proceed by the terms of the contract. I have my own personal reservations about the decision of the court. That notwithstanding, the court has made the decision.
These reservations? Share with us.
The court in Ghana. The court in Ghana.
The High Court's decisions.
In the first place, the order that seeks to preserve the ship.
Impound the ship, right?
We call it preservation
Okay.
of the property. Was an ex parte order, i.e., the plaintiff, NML, went to court without notice to Argentina government, then got the order. Mostly such orders are supposed to last for 10 days unless it's repeated. You do a repeat application of the order. But this order wasn't drafted so. The court made the order that you should post a bond to a tune of a certain amount, so which they failed to do. Now, the second issue that Argentina, which is a pitfall that I realized with Argentina and which they are appealing, is that Argentina filed an unconditional appearance. In instances when...
And what does that mean?
What it means is that if, for instance, Steve, you sue me, and I think that I have a legal right, or there is an irregularity with the process that you have done, I file a conditional appearance, and I seek to set aside the writ of sermons, I seek to set aside service of the writ. If you proceed to file an unconditional appearance, it's presumed that all irregularities, if any, has been cured, or there are no irregularities. And that's when they realize that they have filed an unconditional appearance, thereby subjecting themselves to the jurisdiction of the court. Then they quickly decide to amend their unconditional appearance to a conditional appearance. And the court says no. So they are appealing against the decision
of the court
to allow them to enter a conditional appearance, and then they will have the gravitas, they will have the foundation to bring an application to say that they are immune from the jurisdiction of the court.
But that's been the game. You see, so when you say that...
So Dennis, I mean, what is the likely outcome of all of these legally? I mean, if government of Ghana decides to appeal.
The government of Ghana cannot appeal the decision. The government of Ghana is not...
Who can appeal? The government of Ghana is not a party to the contract.
It's the parties to the decision who can appeal the decision. Unless the decision seeks to affect a third party, then the third party might seek to join the suit properly so that the court will be seized with the jurisdiction to make a determination over the issues over such a third party. So if, for instance, there is a suit between Steve again and Dennis, there is, no matter how Franklin feels,
powerful or
feels, Franklin can say whatever, but Franklin cannot appeal a decision that is binding between you and me, because this is a judgment in persona. It's between the two parties.
Yeah.
And for that matter, if Franklin thinks that the subject matter in litigation is involved, he has to immediately join the matter. And I give you an example. When the Ghana Ports and Harbour realized that the warship has been placed in Deck 11 and it was not good, it was impeding it, they went to the court, brought a process, formally be part of the process, and seek a variation of the court order so that they could move the ship from one deck to the other. Okay, the court granted it, but yet still the people on the ship decided that they will not allow the officials of Ghana to move the ship from one deck to the other. And from reading the proceedings, I realized that there was a contempt proceedings against the commander of the ship. So one way or the other, for government of Ghana to really show the commitment to be interested in this case, it must take the necessary legal steps to join the suit. And I think this case gives him the necessary foundation to make a case in court that the matter seeks to affect the interest of the government of Ghana. And for that matter, it ought to be joined as a proper party to the suit. And the court may, consider the application and join the government of Ghana, i.e. the Attorney General, so that the government of Ghana can be in the same ship with Argentinian government to fight NML capital.
So do you foresee that the government of Ghana or the parties involved might ignore this tribunal order?
It's not the parties involved. The Constitution of Ghana does not allow the enforcement of this decision as if it's automatic. You have to take the necessary legal steps for it to be adopted by the court of Ghana. Till that is done, per Article 11 as a source of Ghana does not include international law. And it's quite interesting that the international law portion of where the Constitution mentions international law falls under the directive principle of state policy, which the courts have held that they are not justiciable per se, or there is a presumption of justiciability. So unless you can show that the international law is justiciable, you have to go through the legal steps. So international law is not part of the laws of Ghana. It says that the government of Ghana shall respect international law, shall promote it.
You've got to clarify that well, because if you say the international law is not party to our laws, because
we are
if you look at our
that's why we are a dualist state. Yeah. For the international law to be part of the laws of Ghana, it has to go through our parliament. Article 175.
Maybe educate me. I want to know what international law here means, because as per what happened in the case of the NML capital and then Argentina, I thought they were enforcing international norms relating to international business. But I understand that. What do you mean by international law? Do you mean, for instance, that of the tribunal? Because permit to my ignorance, because when you say international law, I thought that what the High Court did in the case of the NML and the Libertad essentially was upholding an international customary law that if you owe, you pay.
Yes, the point I'm making is that the courts in Ghana, their core, the core issue that the court had to determine was that of contract.
Sure.
Okay, so it didn't relate to, it was not making a determination about immunity. It's about the defense of, for instance, in Ghana, for you to sue the government of Ghana, you have to give them 30 days notice. Okay, so if you fail to give the government of Ghana 30 days notice, they can bring a defense. One of their defenses is saying that because you did not give me notice, I am not subject to the jurisdiction of the court, or your action is premature. Or instances when if you want to serve a process on the party, let's say a parliamentary, when he's on his way to parliament, when he's coming from parliament, the Constitution says he has immunity. So these are defenses that you can raise. Okay, so that was one of the defenses that Argentina raised. So if you look at the core issue, the NML case, the core issue that the court had to make a determination on, and what actually shaped the mind of the government or the certainty of the contract. And for that matter, and it goes ahead in terms of diffusing the principle of their convention, that's one reason why they went directly to the terms of the contract to say that even your defense that you are seeking to rely on, which is that I have immunity, you yourself, you have waived it.
But let me just tell you that one of the reasons why NML could go, you call it ex parte, right, go to court without notice to the defendant in this case, is essentially because Argentina plays hide and seek all the time. You know, they play hide and seek, so you've got to take them on when. I'm not really an anti-Argentine. I love Argentina football, but I think that their politics is so base that we need to check them in and tell them that even though in Ghana we are still having issues with our presidential elections, we are far, far better.
Yeah.
When
Now,
it comes to
Dennis, I want to ask you a quick question before we take a break. One of our viewers sent a text to ask that what exactly is the interest of Ghana in this case? What does Ghana seek to lose or gain from this case? What is the interest here, really?
One, the interests are more diplomatic and political than legal per se, because and relates to more of international relations than the legalities of it. But it's just the unfortunate incident, quote and unquote, where the government of Ghana diplomatically invites Argentina to bring their warship to train this, and as a result of your requests, such an incident happened. It's the embarrassment that they are seeking to curtail. So the government of Ghana's interest and the government of Ghana's posture all along on international media is that they really want to release the ship. But unfortunately, we cannot do that because, and that's one of the defense, because a court of competent jurisdiction in Ghana has restrained us. And for that matter, we cannot deal with it. And if we should decide to release the ship against the order of the court, I bet some minister will be in contempt of court.
So what do we lose? And what do we gain?
I think that's a question that Imani Franklin can assist us more in terms of the diplomatic relations of it. I think it has more dented our image diplomatically, but it has also, one way or the other, it depends on how you look at it. People think that the judicial system of Ghana is one of the best in the world and is a judicial system that you want to rely on, and that has given Ghana the leverage and the impetus to be considered as a truly democratic state, and it just by word of mouth.
You have no idea. Listen, Ghana decided not too long ago to float bonds, right? And got oversubscribed.
Yeah.
Under the Kufuor administration, we got close to 750 million.
Just floated
this administration floated again. You know why we were able to get all of that? Essentially because, you see, they know that when we owe, we pay. The only time our debts have been forgiven was when it became a condition to enhance democracy. Basically, we've been doing stuff. So $4.5 billion of our debts was paid out of $5.2 billion. We were actually forgiving our debts. But that was over a sustained campaign because we became, if you like, the darling boy of the West, the Bretton Woods institution. But also because we showed, we definitely were showing promise that we wanted to pay our debt. That's one of the reasons. So if you, as a country, can be trusted that you float bonds and people can oversubscribe, it's a huge boost in terms of investment, should I call investment history. It's very important. Now imagine Argentina going to float bonds right now. Nobody will give them a dime. You understand? Simply because they've shown consistently that they don't pay their debts. The second thing is the rule of law. Clearly speaking, I mean, look, this little African country that has got its own checkered history.
It's Banana Republic.
Banana Republic, all of a sudden, has been able to show to the world without any question at all. Because some of the reasons, the Argentine press were all over, state-owned press were, oh, all these people are going to give money to this Ghanaian. And that's what I felt, really insulting. But this was a court that decided, upheld, that, look, the separation of powers must work. Let any president, let any minister dare to vary without going through some other processes the gentleman here would explain, and it will be in contempt of court. At least that's what I'm hearing from the legal
So Franklin, if you look at what has transpired,
Just to add to Franklin, if the court in Ghana is willing to order the government of Ghana to pay its debt, why shouldn't the court in Ghana be willing to order other governments from paying their debt?
And this is very interesting. You know, I told you how somehow I got involved in all of this.
Yes.
6 years ago, I was part of this campaign. It's an anti-Jubilee 2000 campaign, really, that when countries owe, they shouldn't pay because somehow they had all these vulture funds around their necks. What we do know, in fact, is that when countries owe, and they owe private money and aid money, you don't see the difference. They use the two altogether, misuse it, and that's what happened most of the time. So countries like Liberia, Zambia, all these countries that have become basket cases, essentially because of the way they were managed. Now, the fact that there's been war doesn't mean that you shouldn't pay your debt. So there was a bill in the UK House of Commons against what is called vulture funds, essentially saying that if these countries are just, they call them odious debts. Yeah. And I took the view, and with my colleagues, we took the view that, look, you've got to respect international contracts. If you borrow money, you pay. But of course, if you borrow money legally, you pay. Not when you do it illegally, then it becomes judgment debt, which unfortunately somehow some
become a
people
big political issue in Ghana.
Political issue in Ghana. But clearly speaking, there's a principle, and I want Ghanaians who are asking this question, what do we gain? Because I've heard all kinds of very learned people say, oh, we brought this upon ourselves. We should have just sat there somewhere. Who were we? We are playing in international big leagues. Big leagues against who? Argentina. Argentina, your economy is doing far better than Argentina. I'm saying that just while Argentina was fighting the case here in Ghana and fighting many other cases around the world, its own citizens. In fact, there was one old woman who said she just wishes curses. It was raining curses on the Argentine administration.
And you wish that Argentina had brought a plane to
and would have impounded that one as well. But they were
crew.
smarter. So they got Air France to come and fetch the crew. Would have impounded it nicely and would have added up to our democratic credentials.
Well, Senor in Accra says, do we really have competent lawyers in government? I'm waiting impatiently for the day government will win a case. I'm not sure I get the import of this because this is an issue between private entities, and the interest, like the lawyer has said, in Ghana is not exactly, it's just diplomatic, really. So, Peter Swakwa from Sunyai, you say that, but what exactly is the interest of Ghana in keeping the ship, or what will Ghana lose when it releases the ship? That's the question I put to you earlier, so that has been adequately answered, Peter. Thanks for that. And then another one says, I believe this is a very sensitive case. Many issues must be considered as well. I believe because it involves another country's warship. This case assumes international dimensions and should be looked at more carefully from a broader perspective. And then Joe Banye from WA says, the laws of Ghana must be exercised in fullness to deter countries that take things for granted. And this one doesn't have a name, says, good evening to you and your lovely viewers. I think Mr. Franklin Kujo seems not to be getting it right, and multimedia should advise themselves. I don't know why you're saying that. Maybe you know why he's saying that?
You know, so I liken his submission to one of the serial callers who call into a program and ask, what is being discussed? And they tell him, and instantly he has a view. So we can pardon him. I don't know what he's talking about.
He might not be following.
I don't understand what he's talking about.
And then I'm surprised to hear the lawyer say that the sources of Ghanaian law does not include international law. Dennis, I would have you to explain that again. And so now the question from that person is that what happens after ratification? If international law is binding on countries that have signed or ratified, then its legislative processes of Ghana is also affected by this. I think the problem is that we don't have good maritime lawyers to advise our law court when it comes to international maritime law. This comes from KB from Lashibi. Thanks to all of you for sending these messages. Some of them came from Facebook, facebook.com/multitvworld. You can send more. You can also send us text 1760, and we'll gladly read them in a short time that we have. And I must say that we were expecting Ebenezer Apieku, Director, Legal Bureau, Minister of Foreign Affairs, who unfortunately has not turned up. So, Dennis, this is a critical question I like to put to you. The guy saying that I'm surprised that you said that the sources of Ghanaian law does not include international law. Can you clarify?
I did not say that. Our constitution, which we have subscribed to, as Ghanaians.
So what are the sources of law?
The source of law per Article 11.
In Ghana, yeah.
Per Article 11 of the Constitution. And anybody who has a constitution can refer to Article 11, talks about this constitution, meaning the 1992 Constitution, enactments made by or under the authority of Parliament established under this Constitution, meaning enactment that came into effect after 7th January 1993, and any others, rules and regulations made by any person or authority under a power conferred by this Constitution. So the CIs, like the CI 78, CI 75, are others. An existing law. The Constitution goes ahead to define what existing law, to include all those laws that came into effect before the passage of the 1992 Constitution, and use a clause, the conjunctive word, and the common law. And it brings, if you have your Constitution, you could see that after the common law, it puts a full stop there. So the express mention of these sources of law, expressly exclude other sources of law. So the Constitution lists all the sources. So the express mention of these sources excludes other sources. And it concludes, it then says, includes the source of law of Ghana shall comprise of, and it gives a list, and ends it by, and the common law. And it defines what the common law to include. So as I'm saying, and that's more reason why, is because the rationale behind it is because Ghana is a dualist state. We are not a money state, where international law automatically become part of our laws. For international law to be deemed to be part of our laws, it must, per Article 75, it must be ratified by Parliament.
And how can that, particularly the one which is applicable to this Argentine business, how can that be ratified?
It has already been ratified, by my understanding. The United, it's part of the laws of, it's an obligation that Ghana has subscribed onto. But the major lesson to learn from this is the ease and the haste with which Ghana subscribes to international treaties, without any reservations, without any understanding, without any declarations. You have an instance, Ghana, because we want to...
And you have a particular example you want to cite to...
Yeah, I'll give you an example. The U.S. is one of the countries that does not sign on to international treaties.
Easy.
They do not.
But they've ratified a few.
They've ratified a few, but even the ones that they seek to even ratify, they give what we call understanding. They tell you, for them, this clause actually means this. But Ghana goes ahead, signs it. And so, for me, we have decided, government of Ghana, by the executive arm of government, have brought these onto Ghana, so that if you think that your country is a dualist state, you do not subscribe or ratify international courts. Because immediately you do that, and an issue comes and there's a conflict between the international court that we have ratified this treaty and your court, you're going to have a challenge. And that's the same thing that the government of Ghana is facing now.
So, frankly, I mean, moving on way forward, do you think we should take this threat of strained diplomatic relationship with Argentina any serious for us to make concessions?
Not at all. See, no amount of diplomatic pressure should be brought to bear. In fact, can be brought to bear on our judicial independence. I mean, you can't contest that, as he's rightly pointed out. The Articles 125 and 127 clearly, the judicial power and the judicial independence clearly states that not even the president can vary these things anyway. Now, look, the Argentines' actions is a serious erosion of the rights of foreign investors, as I've rightly stated. You can't be taken serious as a country if all you do is to tell foreign investors to hell with you after taking their money. And let's stop treating Argentina like a juvenile delinquent. When they took the money, they knew what they wanted to use the money for.
And yet
they didn't use the money, they didn't apply the money properly.
And they don't want to pay.
And they messed up. And as I've shown you, there's been a history of that country running. I'm not surprised at all that they may not necessarily respect our courts, because they've not had a history of respecting their own Supreme Court decisions. And they've not, if not just handpicking them anyway. So let's stop treating them as if, let's not patronize them, really. I mean, look, they are not, I don't know how to describe it. They've got to pay. And I expect that every court, whether international or the sea, of the rivers, of streams, the fact of the matter is that when people owe, you pay. So you don't need a PhD to know
to understand that.
If you owe, you pay. So in the court that wants to uphold whatever decisions, and I think the UN sometimes becomes too diplomatic with some of these things. And that's why some of the times people have issues with the tribunal system that the UN has, because you don't have the leverage to be able to, assemble what I call reality-based situations or reality-based scenarios into the system that they use. I'm not saying the UN should be scrapped. I mean, that would have been the last thing I was suggesting.
So, Dennis, I'll give you the final word. You don't foresee that this will end anytime soon, right?
No, I do not. And this is if the executive arm of government, i.e. the president and his ministers, should put up any act or omission that seeks to undermine any provision of the Constitution in relation to the president, it is a genuine ground for the president to be removed from office if he decides to undermine the Constitution or do any act that seeks to contravene the Constitution. And by so speaking, it includes the independence of the judiciary. And I know the government knows that it cannot issue a fiat or waive the measures, for it to go away. They have to use the legal system. And by using it, at least we trust the legal system. And I do believe that if now it's on appeal, if they are able to make submissions, the learned judges might listen to them and they might vary the terms of the preservation order. And by so doing, then the ship can go back to Argentina.
Thank you very much, Dennis J. Jumo. He's with Gimpa Business School. I earlier introduced him coming from the law school. He's an associate at Kolendi at law, and Franklin Kujo is also president of Imani Ghana. My name is Stephen Enti, and thanks to you for making time with us. Unfortunately, we were unable to have Ebenezer Pieku, director of the Legal Bureau of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, joining us in the studio. Anyway, that's how we draw the curtains. Good night, and join us again tomorrow for another engaging edition of PM Express. Good night.